Hi, today I am doing a mini tutorial on stitches used when doing wool applique. This is the tutorial I promised you in my blog post on Monday. So two of the stitches that are normally used are the blanket stitch and the whip stitch. And I do my wool applique on fabric. So this is what I am demonstrating on. First of all, I use a pearl cotton. I use Valdani size 8. Any kind of pearl cotton that you decide you'd like to use, though, is acceptable. You can also use floss, embroidery floss. And if I use an embroidery floss, I usually use at least 3 strands. So first thing you need to do is you thread your needle and then knot the end of your thread. Take the piece in your hand, and you're going to start by coming up from the bottom right on the edge of your applique, but not in it. Pull it through. Now, to do the blanket stitch, you are going to go just a little bit up and into the applique. See where I've got my needle. And the amount of the width of stitches is just all dependent on what you want. Some people mark a little mark on their thumb to keep their stitches completely even. People eyeball it. But it just depends on your preference of how far apart you want your stitches. So as you're pulling it through, and I'm teaching you a really easy version, you just leave that loop, a little bit of the loop of the thread above. And then you're going to come up from the bottom again on the edge of the applique, and you're perpendicular right where you went down inside the on the applique, but your needle is coming up inside the loop, and as you pull your thread, it makes what I call a little tooth on your applique. And then you go ahead and you do your next stitch, go down into the applique, pull, leave your little loop, come back up inside the loop, and as you pull, making sure you don't have a knot on the bottom like I just got here, pull that out, and as you pull, then you have another little tooth on the top, and you just go along doing that until you get to the end of your applique piece. So that is the blanket stitch, and I use chenille needles. I use in size 22. I've also used a size 24. The 22s just happen to be the size that I think works well when I'm working with applique, but you can figure out which size works best for you by experimenting with the size needles. And I always keep a nice little sharp pair of scissors with me to clip my threads. Now, I'm just going to clip this here because then I'm going to show you another stitch, which is called the whip stitch. So we're going to knot this. And I usually use a whip stitch on a stem when I have a stem for a flower. So I've just got a little piece of stem as a just an example here. So what you're going to do is you come up from the bottom, right next to the edge of your applique, and then you're just going to kind of come down almost right next to it, and then come up inside a little bit of the strip that is your stem, and then you go back down on the outside, come up in your applique, go down again right next to where you came up, but out of the applique, and then back up in the applique. So as you can see, it's just creating these little tiny nubs, just catching the wool piece, and so they're not quite as visible, and that's called whip stitching. I like to do that on stems because a lot of times the stems, the pieces of wool you're using are thin and could possibly fray more. So I like to do that for my stems. In the future, I'm going to show you some decorative stitches that I do just for fun on my applique pieces. But for now, that's all for today. Thank you for joining me.